We have an outstanding panel today, particularly for the subject which is the do or die priority of infrastructure development. You have the speaker details in your folder, so I'm not going to go too much into the details. I'll just mention we have Jehan Çelebi, Vice Chairperson of Çelebi Holdings Turkey. We have Chairman Diao Chun-he of the China International Contractors Association. We have Mr. Gajendra Haldia, one of India's senior-most civil servants and policy wonks, who has helped shape the policies that particularly impact infrastructure. We have Marcus Hottenrott, co-head and Chief Investment Officer of Morgan Stanley Infrastructure of the UK, and Tao Xiang, Deputy General Manager, Zoom Leon International, People's Republic of China. I propose to make a few initial comments just for 4 or 5 minutes, and then I would like to request each of the panelists to make initial opening comments of about 5 to 6 minutes. Now, we have a largish panel, and I'd like to keep some time at the end for interaction with delegates. And after each panelist has made opening statements, we'll open up the House for questions and comments and interaction. I'd like to start by saying that if you look at just the Asian infrastructure requirements, the numbers one hears are astonishing. $8 trillion is what is being talked about. In India itself, we talk about $1 trillion. Now, I am not competent to speak about the challenges in the entire Asian region, so I propose to make just a few brief comments on the Indian scenario. The Indian scenario can be seen as a glass half full or a glass half empty. Our requirement is in the range of $1 trillion just in India itself. Now, if you look at the 10th 5-year plan period which has ended, we were in the range of 4 to 5% of GDP being invested in infrastructure. And that was lower than what the World Bank traditionally advises for developing countries, which is a minimum of 7%. There are many countries that have actually exceeded that, China being an example. What has happened to India is that we have upped that number, and today we are operating at a level of 7% of GDP being invested into infrastructure. And that is on a much higher base today because the economy has been growing substantially over the years. So obviously we are tackling many of the challenges, and those of you who have visited India in recent years will have noticed the difference. You'll notice the difference in the airports, you'll see the difference in the roads and the flyovers, not just in Delhi. If you go around the country, you'll see it in various parts. And the most important, I think, the most intriguing part is that there are parts of India, large parts, I'd say about 8 or 10 states, large states, which a decade ago were well behind the national curve in terms of GDP growth rate, in terms of infrastructure investment. And the best thing that's happening in India is many of these states, as I said, about 8 to 10 states, today are growing much faster than the national average. This is a good thing socially, politically, because there was a concern about a divide where parts of India would transition into a more developed state and parts of India would get left behind. These states, about 8 or so of them, are even today growing at an average of 10% a year, when the Indian GDP growth rate has come down to 5%. I'll just conclude my comments by saying that there are nevertheless many challenges, and one of the key challenges seems to be issues of land acquisition, and that has bedeviled many projects, many infrastructure projects throughout the country. We are grappling with it. There is a draft land acquisition bill that is supposed to come up in Parliament shortly. If any of you read the Indian financial papers this morning, you would see there's quite a bit of discussion on it. There are also administrative issues that we need to tackle, and instead of making further comments on this, I would leave that part of the discussion to Mr. Gajendra Haldia, who can talk about the Indian aspect, and of course the other panelists who will talk about the other challenges of the do or die priority of infrastructure. So without further ado, I propose to get started, and I will request Madam Jehan Chalebi to make her initial comments in about 5 or 6 minutes.
Thank you very much. Actually, I just like to outline the private sector contribution in this type of infrastructure development in the countries, because we believe as a private company, we always try to bring our experience and our funds and our management skills to the different countries when they like to develop in their infrastructure area. Because being in aviation sector for 55 years, we had some different approach to this type of infrastructure development. But we definitely experienced that if government and the private sector and the financial institution, if they can be hand to hand, this type of development always work much faster and much efficiently. That's why today I will try to outline what is the important actually area for private investors, and also where the government should be really clear about this type of development, and how to work actually together with these three key actually groups in this business. As we had already some experience in India, I will try to outline also several issues what can be done much better together in India with government and the financial institution. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'd next like to request Chairman Diao Shen-he of the China International Contractors Association. We do have a little bit more time than what I think some of the panelists may have understood. You can comfortably take 5 or 6 minutes or a couple of minutes more if you'd like.
那个基础设施呢，对于经济社会发展的重要性啊，是不言而喻的。
The importance of infrastructure
一个国家和地区的基础设施是否完善，
goes without
是
saying.
经济长期增长、
Infrastructure
持续
is
发
the
展的一个
foundation
重
for
要基
a
础。
long-term, sustainable and
当
stable
前
economic
发达国
development.
家通常拥有比较完善的
At
基
present,
础设
developed
施，
countries
而
enjoys
广大的发展中国家
full-fledged
基
infrastructure,
础设施还有
but that
待
of
提升。
developing countries have
对于
much to
新
be
兴市场来
desired.
说，加快基
For
础设施
emerging
投资与
countries,
建设，
stepping up
对于
the
新形势
development
下
of infrastructure
消除国际
is
金融危机的影
conducive
响，
to reduce the
促进世界
impact
经
of
济的复苏，
international financial
促
crisis,
进互利共赢，
promote global
增强
economic
人民的福
recovery,
祉，具有重要意义。
advance mutual benefit and win-win outcome.
国际基础设施建设除了受经济发展水
International
平、自然
infrastructure
条件因
construction
素
projects
影响
are
之外，
subject to
本身
economic
它
development
具有
level
投资规
and
模
natural
大、
factors.
建设周期
It
长、
is also
回
large
报
scale
率低、
in
风
investment,
险集中
long-term
等
in
等的一些
nature,
特征。
low in return
因
and
此，对于
concentrated
新
in
兴
risks.
的国家来说，
It is
依
fairly
靠一个国
hard
家的
for
力量和
emerging
纯粹的
countries
商业模
to
式，
solely
往往难以
complete
达
it
到目的。
on their own
这
strengths
里面
and
呢，
business
我有3
model.
个观点。
Now I have
首
three
先，
opinions.
只有加强各国政府
Only by
间
strengthening
金融机构、
pragmatic cooperation
企业
between
间的务实
governments,
合作，
financial
充分
institutions,
发挥
and
各国政府的
enterprises,
引导作用，
giving into full
才
play
能
the
促进
leading role
国
of
际
the
基础设
government,
施建设的可持续
can
发展。
national infrastructure construction develop in a sustainable manner.
其次，在区域经
Besides
济一体化深入发展的
The
过程中，
increasing of
区域内的互联
interconnectivity
互通
within a
基础设
region
施的建设，可以带
can
动
advance
相关国家的经
eco-social
济社会
development
发展，
and deepen
加深区
complementary
域内
development
经济
of
融合
countries in this
与互
region.
补发展。周边国家的互联互通基础设施项目
Interconnectivity
将成
building
为
of
国
neighboring
际基础
countries
设施
will
建
be
设投
an
资合作
important
的
sector
重要内容
of
之一。
international infrastructure construction investment.
第三，解决
Third,
基础设施建设的
Private
需求旺
sector
盛和
in a
资金不
country
足的问
alone
题。
can't bridge the
光靠
gap
自己本国的
between
私营
vibrant
部门的力
demands
量是不够
and the
的。
lack of capital.
大部分情况下，
Foreign governments
需要外
and
国政府的
financial
支持
institutions
和各国金
should
融机
also
构的财力
participate.
支持。 为此，许多发展中
That's
国
why
家
we
都
see a
采
lot
取
of
了一系列
measures
的措
taken
施
by developing
来
countries
吸引外商
to
直接
attract
投资，
foreign direct
需要开展国际
investment
合作，
and
加
strengthen
强基
support
础设
for
施建设、
investment.
投资保护。目前，新兴国家投融资市场的主要来
There are
源，
two major
一是
sources
多
of
边融资机
financing
构、
by developing
国际
countries.
组织、
First
国
is
际商业银
multilateral
行融资。
financing
二是出
institutions,
口信贷。
international
但以
organizations,
上
and
两种融
international
资渠道
commercial
总
banks.
是面临着许多
Second,
新的问
export
题。
credit.
新兴市场基础设施投资不足
The
是一
lack
个
of
突出的
capital
问
is
题
a。prominent
且
problem
非
in
洲
the
大陆
development
每
of
年
infrastructure
就面临着
in
高达
emerging
310
countries.
亿美元的
The
基
gap
础
of
设施融资
financing
缺
in
口，
African continent
解
is
决新兴国家
3.1
基础
billion
设施
annually.
建设的需求。
The key to solve
旺
such a
盛和资
problem
金不足的
is
问题，
promoting
一个关键的出
diversification
路
of financing,
就是推动
such
融
as
资方式的
advanced
多样化，
public-private joint
例如
management,
推动公私合营模式，
and enact
制定
laws
针对
for
PPP
PPP.
的具体法律。中国的国际承包商除了
Apart
传统
from
的 EPC 模
traditional
式之外，
EPC model,
还探索开展了 BOT
Chinka also
以及
explores
PPP 的公私合
BOT
营模
and
式，
PPP.
同时也通过中国金融
We
机构的密
expand
切合
export
作，
credit
扩大
through
了
close
出口
cooperation
信
with
贷资
Chinese
金的使
financial
用，
institutions.
探索了出口信贷、建筑
We
工
put
程、
forward a package
资源开
deal
发
for
等一揽子
export
解决
credit,
方案的合作模
construction
式，
project,
为
and
缺少资金
resources
的发展中
developing.
国家基础设施
Hence
建设
plays a new
找到
trial
了一
for
个
Chinese
新的发展
enterprises,
道路。
lack of financing.
中国作为发展中国家，近年来对
China
基础
has
设施建
witnessed
设和投资
rapid
方面
development in
发展得也
infrastructure
很快。
construction.
我衷心的希望进一
And
步加
Chinka
强与世
sincerely
界各
hope
国
to
的同
further
行们的
deepen
合
our
作，
cooperation
不断
with
探
our
索和
colleagues
丰富合
to
作内
explore
容
and
以及方
enrich
式
the，content
促
and
进
model
新兴
of
发
our
展中国家
cooperation
的
and
经济
promotes
与社会发展。
eco-social development
这是
of
我的观
emerging
点。
countries.
Thank you. Let me ask next Mr. Marcus Hottenrott, Co-Head and Chief Investment Officer of Morgan Stanley Infrastructure UK, to make his opening comments.
Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you for being here at this early hour. I would like to say a few words about our organization to give you a sense for the perspective that I'm going to give. We are a global infrastructure investing platform. So we manage predominantly pension fund money, insurance money, as well as capital of sovereign wealth funds. We currently have a $4 billion fund that is invested in equity both in OECD countries as well as in emerging market countries. We have 4 investments in India at this point and 1 investment in China. And what I would like to talk about is how to tap into a pool, a very significant pool of capital that is available from pension funds around the world, insurance companies around the world, and sovereign wealth funds in order to address the financing needs and the sums that were mentioned and that are required in countries such as India. And it's ultimately all about predictability for the investors, and it's about packaging projects and investment opportunities in such a way that they are ready to be invested into. And this predictability ultimately also drives the cost of investment because it determines the risk profile of particular investment opportunities. And the lower the perceived risk is on the basis of the concrete project, but also the infrastructure investing experience in the particular country, the lower the return requirements of the particular investors will be, and therefore the lower the cost of the project will be, and ultimately the lower the cost to the end consumer will be. Yeah? So therefore, it is ultimately in the interest of policymakers and the public sector to ensure that concrete projects are presented in an investable manner but also to increase the predictability of the concrete project, of the performance of the concrete project. But then secondly, also to ensure that there's an overall good investment experience for investors in the particular sector, in the particular country. I want to give some examples that we have observed that work well or maybe don't work so well. In many cases, governments set up co-investment agencies. So they effectively say, come to our country, to this particular sector, and we, the government, have set up a certain investor that will co-invest with you and that should give you comfort. I mean, frankly, ideally, things are presented in such a way that you don't need such a government partner. Because this government, such government partner will never have the perspective of a private investor. And it may be to a degree, comforting to have such a partner there, but we would much rather see projects that are properly structured such that we can invest into them ourselves, possibly with other private partners that are maybe not financial investors, but local construction companies or whatever other local partners. Ultimately, when we think about emerging market and investing, and as I said, we also invest in very boring infrastructure, in the UK, regulated utility companies and gas transmission pipelines in the United States and so forth. When we think about emerging markets, it's predominantly greenfield projects, which in terms of cash flow profile are somewhat different from operating companies, in the sense that in many cases for the first few years there is less cash flow or no cash flow whatsoever. That's generally acceptable. Greenfield projects, the risk that an investor takes on are mainly contractual risks vis-a-vis the counterparties, the contractors. But then it's everything around the permitting and kind of local issues. In terms of asset management requirements, the skills that we need to bring to the table and that drive this predictability, the perception is that while we focus in the developed world on efficiency of companies, i.e. we try to reduce cost and so forth, in emerging markets, it's all about making things happen, i.e. managing the local constituencies and so forth. And there again, the lower the burden is, or the less hard it is to manage situations and to progress projects, the higher the predictability, the lower the return requirements, and therefore the lower the cost of the particular project. One last comment, we prefer to have small successes than to have big failures. I am originally German, and the German government had the ambition in the space of PPPs, public-private partnerships, to bring very large projects to market in the area of railways, in the area of military, projects of over 5 billion euros, and they all failed. So it's better you come out with a small project that is well prepared and that can be invested into and becomes a success, and maybe have another small project and then yet another small project and build a track record that gives people comfort that things work, rather than to start off your project with something humongous and glamorous that the whole world talks about. If it fails, it is certain that the whole world will talk about it.
Thank you. I'm going to come back when all the speakers are done with their initial comments and probe a little deeper about some of the things they've said. With that, let's move on to Mr. Gajendra Haldia.
Thank you very much. As you pointed out in your initial remarks, we have actually been able to make a quantum jump in terms of the total investment that we have been making in infrastructure. During the 10th plan, that is 2002-2007, we were investing a little less than 5% of our GDP in infrastructure. But in the 11th plan, we took a host of measures because it was well established that following the economic liberalization of the 1990s, the pace of economic growth had accelerated, but investment in infrastructure had not been able to keep pace, largely because it was in the public sector and we hadn't got enough opening up to get private investment. So the focus during the 11th plan, that is 2007-2012, was to actually expand our policy framework in a manner that actually enabled large inflows of private investment into infrastructure. When we did that, from 5%, we were able to raise our investment levels in infrastructure to 7.2%. Now, there's a very sharp jump if you take the economy-wide position, changing a share from 5% to 7.2% of GDP, and that too on a constantly and rapidly enlarging base of GDP itself. This was largely possible because we accelerated private investment. And if I give you some numbers, well, while the total investment doubled between the 10th plan and 11th plan at constant prices, so roughly from 240 billion, it rose to about 285 billion or so. So the total investment doubled, but the private investment increased by 4 times. Earlier we were getting 22% of investment from private sector. In the 11th plan we got 38%. In quantum terms, from about 45 billion invested over 5 years, we got something like 180 billion over the next 5 years. And in the 12th plan, which is what we've started in the current year, we are looking at an investment projection of 1 trillion, again doubling. We doubled from 10th to 11th plan, now we want to double again from 11th to 12th plan. So that's the 1 trillion number. And here again we are looking at private investment to grow from 180 billion to about 450 to 470 billion US dollars. So we're looking at a huge increase in investment from private sector and consequently opening up a very large opportunity, enormous opportunity both for domestic investors and for foreign investors. We have actually laid out a host of frameworks and policy frameworks, contractual frameworks, regulatory frameworks to enable this private investment to succeed. And this includes very simplified, straightforward, transparent and fair competitive bidding systems which are all in the public domain, which are carried out very openly, followed by a contractual model concession agreement. We have actually standardized all our documents. So if we invite bids for a road project or for an airport project or for a port project, these terms and conditions have been standardized and they are in the public domain. And this standardization of these documents has been done after a huge amount of effort involving stakeholders and consultations over an extended period of time before we actually finalize these documents. And our experience so far has been that both to Indian investors as well as to foreign investors, these documents and these policies have been in most cases found acceptable. Wherever we have followed the detailed consultative process, it has worked. We have currently over 300 PPP projects under construction or in operation. And the largest PPP project could qualify to be among one of the largest PPP projects in the world. And that is a $3 billion metro rail system in Hyderabad, which is under construction, and I think in about 2 years' time, the entire 72-kilometer metro rail system in Hyderabad will be operational. The selected bidder who's carrying out this task is L&T. It's one of the largest Indian companies, There were, of course, foreign bidders too. So there are examples galore of successful PPP projects in India. As a result of all this, according to World Bank reports, India has been the top recipient of PPP investments over the last 3 years across all the developing countries. And a study published by ADB in collaboration with the EIU, Economic Intelligence Unit of The Economist, indicates that while the frameworks in Australia and UK are very mature PPP frameworks, India ranks just below them. So I think the enabling framework is there, the opportunity is there, and it seems to be working because it has been demonstrated by the large flow of investments. Of course, we have some problems such as land acquisition, environment clearances, etc. And the government is trying to resolve all these by setting up very high level mechanisms such as the Cabinet Committee on Infrastructure. I'm not saying that everything is resolved, it's all in the works. These problems keep cropping up as you move along, and we are doing our best. There are some difficulties which have actually partly slowed down investment, especially environment clearances and land acquisition, but we are trying to resolve all these problems, and there has been a lot of progress. Now, just to conclude, I believe that when we try to access the 1 trillion number, there will be more serious financing gaps than we have observed before. And there I take the point made by my colleague here that we'll have to look at pension funds, insurance funds, sovereign wealth funds to look at investment opportunities in India. So far our equity markets have been very well organized and well functioning. So there is a mechanism by which we expect equity to flow in at whatever market returns are required. So we don't cap returns, we allow markets to determine the returns on infrastructure projects through pure competition. As far as debt is concerned, we do feel that there might be a gap, so we need to worry about that, and we have set up some mechanisms to identify actions that are needed. Many recommendations have been made, but one big step that we've already taken is the creation of infrastructure debt funds. This is a new vehicle, and the whole idea is that we should attract a lot of international flows, long-term debt of a very stable nature at comparatively lower costs. In order to do that, there has to be a lot of credit enhancement. So our infrastructure debt funds are structured in a manner that there is a implicit sovereign guarantee, so that foreign pension funds and insurance funds can feel comfortable investing in these funds. These have just been rolled out, and it's a big opportunity. I personally believe that when we look at these large investment figures, they will only be enabled if there are large scale investment flows, cross-border investment flows. So we will need a lot of investment coming into India, both in terms of equity and debt. Debt volumes will obviously have to be larger, and we have taken a number of steps. What I have given you is a very broad overview because of the limitations of time, but should any organization or group of people be interested in exploring any of these things further in greater detail, I'll be very happy to engage in a dialogue at a mutually convenient time. Thank you.
Thank you. As I said earlier, I'm going to revisit some of these issues when I open up the conversation before we open it up to the floor. So for our final panelist today, I request Tao Xiang to make his opening comments.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Panda. Zoomlion actually is the top manufacturing of construction machineries in China, and we actually number 7 in terms of the sales volume worldwide of the construction machinery industry. We actually enjoy 20% compound annual growth rate of over 60% in the past 20 years. And now we are focusing on the very aggressive international business expansion. So thanks for the organizers to invite as the manufacturers to say some of the ideas of the infrastructure. And definitely the constellation of the growth that covers the investment from emerging markets towards emerging markets. And as some of the panelists already indicate that infrastructure play a key role in this. But if we look at the trend, saying that there is the current value, if we interpret this market from the manufacturer perspective, that there's a trend that the absolute value nowadays still lies in Europe and the States in North America. But there's a tendency that more and more tending from developed countries to developed countries. I share with you some figures by AEM, and that they forecast the figure in the next 5 to 8 years. For example, in Asia, the share of the construction machinery total market value will increase from 31 to 46. But on the other hand, from Europe, for example, it decreased from 39 to 29. In North America, the figure will be 25 decrease to
这个高速公路，我们的很多这个能源建设方面，大量的使用了 PPP 和 BOT 的这种形式，那么呢，取得了非常好的效果。
And we adopted PPP and the BOT model in many projects, for example, the expressway, the energy construction, and this has yielded fruitful result.
你比方我们的一些高速公路，我们的一些电站，还有呢我们的一些大的这些这个高档的这些酒店呐等等，都是采取了这种 BOT 的方式，采取了 PPP 的方式，有效的吸引了这个各方面的投资，所以呢这个取得了非常好的效果。
For example, as I just mentioned, many of projects like expressway, power station, and very high-quality hotels all adopted PPP and BOT models, and which efficiently attracting investment from different channels.
那么我觉得呢，在基础设施建设方面，无论是发达国家还是发展中国家，它有这种刚性的需求，必然要解决多元化的投资问题。
I think no matter for developed countries or developing countries, they all have large demands for infrastructure construction, and this should be solved through multilateral financing channels.
单靠哪一个方面都难以去这个很好的解决，所以呢，我建议呢，就是我们应该开展这个国际化的经济合作，开展各国 政府间、金融机构间和这个企业间的这个务实的合作。
So no party can solve the investment issues alone. So I hereby suggest all relevant parties can carry out economic cooperation, and the governments, financial institutions, as well as enterprises from all countries should work in hand to solve this problem.
我觉得刚才几位的发言呢都非常的重要。 就是要找到一个政府和这个金融机构以及企业都关心的这种焦点，解决这个问题可能是个有效的途径。
And I thought all those speakers in this panel speeches are very provoking, and I think they all focus on how to find a fitting point which attracts the attention of both the government, the financial institutions, as well as enterprises.
我们现在呢，这个有1500多家会员企业。 那么，在世界的各国，我们广泛的采取了这个基础设施的建设和投资活动，并且呢，现在越来越多的国家和这个企业跟我们开展这方面的合作，包括在印度，我们有很多中国公司在这地方开展这个基础设施方面的合作。
And Shanghai has 1,500 members, and we are operating in every corner of the world. And cooperating with many stakeholders, including here in India, we have many members now operating projects.
Thank you. That brings us to the end of our allotted time. But if anyone has a burning question to ask, I think we can accommodate one more. If not, I think I thank you for your participation and attendance, and I thank all the speakers for their very incisive comments on this issue. And as we break for tea, I'm hopeful that the caffeine intake will spur more questions. I think many of the speakers will be available during the break, and perhaps you can take the opportunity of asking them directly. Thank you very much.
Thank you.